given recent events. However, I felt led, compelled even, to bring it back. Voices like ours, and I mean ours, can't be silenced.
Yeah, and by the way, he's one of the OGs of doing this. And he is very, very good at doing this.
So strong.
And so today, for the first time in many years, Change My Mind returns.
Where have you been, Crowder? We've been waiting for you.
A while ago, I made a video that didn't age well at all. Poppy here would agree with me. It was titled The Rise and Fall of Steven Crowder. And at the time, Crowder had virtually disappeared from YouTube. And admittedly, I never really went on Rumble, so I didn't realize that he still had a pretty decent sized following off of the mainstream platforms. Although many of you pointed this out to me. What I want to analyze in this video is how exactly Steven Crowder returned to mainstream politics and why he might just be the biggest voice in conservatism once again. And here's the deal. Before we talk about our boy Crowder's return, first we gotta analyze his fall, and all the details surrounding his fall are actually key on why I think he has been able to return to mainstream conservatism successfully without any hiccups. Steven Crowder's woes began when he fell out with the Daily Wire. Originally, he and Ben Shapiro were the best of friends, and ironically, their friendship and Crowder's relationship with the company went sour right after the Daily Wire offered him a $50 million paycheck to join the company. And to put this in its proper context, Steven Crowder had some legitimate concerns at the time. YouTube was taking some very anti-free speech stances around COVID and any questioning of the results of the 2020 election. You guys remember those days. Facebook jail was locking people up left and right, and misinformation and fact-checking were on many social media sites, policing what you could and couldn't say. It went so far that YouTube demonetized Crowder for a period of time and forcefully removed some of his videos, essentially dictating what he talked about. In Daily Wire's offer to Crowder and other people who joined the team was included some fine print that stated that if YouTube demonetized you, your paychecks from the Daily Wire company would take a massive hit because the Daily Wire's profits came directly from YouTube ads. Maybe you can imagine why Steven Crowder took issue with this. He felt that the Daily Wire couldn't be radical truth-teller conservatives anymore. YouTube decided what they were allowed to say and when they were allowed to say it, and the Daily Wire agreed to YouTube's terms. This started a miniature civil war within conservatism. It began with a civil argument over legitimate concerns until Crowder dropped a recording of the conversation he had with Jeremy Boring, essentially exposing the fact that Boring sold out. But the Daily Wire was super popular at this time and very powerful within conservative politics. They still had Candace Owens and Brett Cooper, and of course figures like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Jeremy Boring. Crowder's PR was slaughtered in mainstream, non-Rumble navigating conservatism, and with YouTube demonetizing him, he switched over to Rumble, which made his content less visible to independent and leftist voters who may have rage bait clicked or been genuinely curious about what he had to say. Ironically, around this time, his spat with the Daily Wire was heating up. Some clips dropped of an argument between him and his now ex-wife, which painted him in a very unfavorable light. At the time, that sort of sealed the deal. He was anathematized, and many of the conservatives I talked to definitely sided with the Daily Wire. But Crowder was flexible. He built a coalition of conservatives on Rumble and streamed to millions every weekday. He was sort of like Peter Pan at this point, a leader of the Lost Boys and dissenters. He still had a big audience, but was laying low and out of the spotlight for a while, especially on platforms like YouTube. And this is when things began to happen that paved the way for Crowder's return. First of all, the Daily Wire, the darling of mainstream conservatism, began to fall apart. Crowder's main opponents in the conservative game started fighting amongst themselves. First, the Daily Wire lost its biggest female personality, Candace Owens, over her not being pro-Zionism and her questions about the war in Gaza. That hurt their numbers a bit, but the majority of their audience stuck with them. Then came their huge loss that really began to shape public perspective around the Daily Wire in a negative way. Brett Cooper left and was replaced by her ex-best friend, Reagan Conrad. If you want to check out that drama, I do have a whole series that I dedicated to the Daily Wire and various personalities in the organization. I'll link that in the description below. But this is really when the Daily Wire began to lose a big portion of their audience. Two of their biggest personalities were gone, and with the growth of Rumble and what many viewed as the Daily Wire's increasingly growing Israel first stance, the company's ratings went down like hawk to a coin. And the Daily Wire started to have financial difficulties as well. Their Snow White film, which they were rumored to have invested $100 million into, was scrapped due to Brett Cooper's departure, and the Daily Wire began losing a ton of money on their BentKey streaming service. So much so that Jeremy Boring was removed from his position as the CEO of the company. And his figures on Rumble, such as Nick Fuentes, began to become more mainstream, and with Ben Shapiro now beefing with one of the biggest figures in conservatism, Tucker Carlson, public attitude has shifted towards Crowder's main rival. Them picking a fight with him right now would only work in his favor. Now to the tragic part of our story. When Steven Crowder disappeared from public eye, someone else picked up his torch and did it extremely well, Charlie Kirk. He traveled to college campuses and debated college students in the same way that Steven Crowder had. His loss was a hard one for conservatives. It was a hard one for me. With Kirk gone, there was a void. And Steven Crowder, I'm sure fueled by righteous anger at the senseless act of violence, stepped out of the shadows to fill that void. He relaunched his most popular practice that Kirk honored in his life, his Change My Mind episodes. Crowder was back when conservatives needed him most, kind of like Batman in The Dark Knight Rises. And this time, he was in an even better position than before he left. He is a Rumble empire and may just be the biggest mainstream conservative on Rumble, as well as nearly 6 million subscribers on YouTube. He's racking up millions of views across platforms, and this time, if YouTube demonetizes him, he won't have to build from the ground up. America was primed for Crowder's return, and his enemies were in a weak enough position themselves that they couldn't launch a smear campaign. But now that Crowder's back, I guess my advice to him would be twofold. First, never stop hustling. And second, and this is incredibly personal, but sometimes if we haven't done enough self-work, instead of taking our calling might just take us. I think I've seen enough personal growth in Steven Crowder. Hope that he's done some self-work. Well, stay close to God, be humble, and kick butt, man. Much love, and I'll catch you guys next time. If you enjoy this kind of content and would like to see more conservative YouTube content in the future, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to stay tuned for my other videos.